Good evening and good morning to folks based on the geography where you are located. So today we will cover about the basics of business process reengineering. The thing is, most of us have some kind of an idea about it, but there are certain myths, certain criticisms which are available, which are there in the market today. I'm not here to make a case for BPR, but we are trying to make sure that we get the basics right. So in my agenda, what we will cover is we will talk about whether business process reengineering has come back again. What is the truth? We will actually have a definition. We will try to define what is business process reengineering, because most people I have seen that they get the definition wrong, in the sense that they try to put any kind of improvement projects under BPR, which is not correct, and that's why there is a mismatch in expectations. We also look at what are the commonalities in reengineer process. Now this is not purely my learning. Yes, I have been part of quite a few BPR projects, but it's more of a collective learning. We also talk about how the new world in a BPR, in a re-engineered process, looks like. We also talk about what is the enabling role of IT. Yes, we have to accept the fact that we have to live with IT, and that is going to be the enabler for us, with a word of caution that it's business which always drives IT. IT is always an enabler. IT should not drive business. That is where some companies have actually gone wrong, because if you are trying to automate a process without even re-engineering it, you really don't get the benefits out of it. We also look at some of the candidates which are fit for BPR. There is no hard and fast rule, but we have looked at most of the cases where we had successful BPRs. What are the broad characteristics which are candidates for BPR? And we also look at some of the common mistakes which companies have made over the years. That's why there has been a mismatch in expectations. Again, I want to make it very clear that BPR is not for everybody. If you are looking at, say, 10 to 20% improvement, then I will recommend not to go for a BPR. But yes, if you are really looking for some drastic improvements, yes, you can look at BPR, because it involves time, it involves money, it involves effort. So moving to the next slide. I remember in the 90s, when I was still in college, there was a lot of talk about business process reengineering. There were consulting companies everybody was actually opening a shop on BPR, and that's where it went wrong. Everybody was trying to jump into the bandwagon, and there were mismatch in expectations. So what people thought that, yes, that was only for 90s, we don't need BPR. It was more of an empty slogan. But the point is, BPR always existed. Only thing is, where we went wrong is we tried to put any kind of an improvement project, any program, we tried to call it BPR, which actually where we went wrong drastically. So looking at the thing, it is alive. It was always there. Only thing is, 90s people wanted a quick fix. Okay, I want to improve, give me BPR. But BPR is not for everybody. We need to have our DNA right, that yes, whether my company is suitable for BPR. Because again, I said it costs money, you have to invest people, you have to invest time. And if you don't see any benefits out of it, you actually got your fundamentals wrong. There have been businesses who have actually used reengineering to transform their operations. Let's look at a simple case where you go to an electronics shop to buy, say, an iPhone or say any kind of a gadget. So if you look at the 80s, people always used to go to the shop, look at, have a feel, and then buy it. Nobody actually thought that, okay, there can be something like a virtual store. We talk about Best Buy, not the best example to give, but yes, when Best Buy came into the market, they actually changed the entire business process. Okay, Best Buy had some stores in US, but the maximum profits which they made was out of their virtual stores. So this is a typical example of how the entire process was re-engineered. The thing is, we should not look at function by function, but we should look at a process. For example, the entire order to cash cycle. There will be the way we order. Suppose a customer orders a good, we do a credit checking. Is credit checking really needed? These are some of the fundamental things we need to look at if we are looking at some drastic improvements. And believe me, the way order management, the way manufacturing used to work in the 80s, a lot of things have changed because some companies have actually drastically done an improvement through BPR. Another thing is, once we define a process, we don't try to deviate. But if you will have different kind of customers. So you need to have different processes for different kinds of customers. I'm not saying that you should have one process for each customer, but you have to have multiple versions of the same process to handle your exceptions. Because if you are rigid on one simple process and try to maintain it through exceptions, then you are not actually optimizing your process. Now, what is BPR? The thing is, many times I have seen people think that it is improving my process. See, process improvement is not BPR. You can call it a Kaizen or something like a continuous improvement process. To put it in a way, BPR is, what will I do if I have to do my business today? It's simple. I take a blank sheet of paper and start. There are no baggages, no biases. So under the current circumstances, if I have to do business, how do I do it today? So it's starting over. These are not about incremental changes, and it needs a fundamental rethinking and radical redesign. Thing is, we don't try to improve upon a process. We actually look at redesigning the whole thing, and we are looking at dramatic improvements. Again, I said, if you're looking at 10 to 20% improvements, BPR is not the way. You will unnecessarily waste your time, money, and people. So it's all about cost, quality, service, and speed. If you want to improve them drastically, then BPR is there for you. The way Dell has done it, the way they have a moving supply chain where they assemble on the floor, nobody dreamt of it. It was purely an assembly line that my thing has to move from one work center to another. But what Dell has done, that is another example of a BPR. Now let's look at, once I have re-engineered my process, how it looks like. The thing is, several jobs are combined into one. For example, today you only used to do credit checking. But the problem is, if I take an order to cash cycle, there are multiple people doing multiple things. But the problem arose, nobody owned the process. For example, the customer has ordered goods, it is lying with the credit check department, the customer doesn't have any clue where it is. So in a re-engineered process, you have an owner who actually owns the process. Of course, you will still have a flow, but you don't have silos where one department, once the file has to move from this department to this department. So there will be a single person doing 3 or 4 activities. Next is, workers make decisions. In a re-engineered process, it's actually contrary to what Taylor's principle was, that workers cannot think. You just have to have a assembly line where each person is a specialized person. He will do only his work. That worked well, excellent, when you were on a growth path. But now that you cannot have those astronomical growth, it's imperative that if you are looking for a BPR re-engineered process, you have to enable your people to make decisions. The steps in the process are performed in natural order. It's not that sequence 1 has to follow after first sequence 1, sequence 2, sequence 3. Why? If 2 and 3 can follow parallelly, why not? Again, processes have multiple versions, which I was emphasizing. Like you have a trade customer, you have a non-trade customer. Trade customer in the sense, I will say that you are selling to a private party, non-trade if I say government. So you will have 2 versions of the process. Otherwise, if you try to maintain one single process, you will end up only handling exceptions. And work is performed where it makes the most sense. It's just not about cost, it's about skill set, it's about nearness to the market, it's about your total end-to-end supply chain where it makes more sense to do your process. Checks and controls are reduced. If you look at some of the companies, there are too many checks, too many controls. Why are they needed? Are they really needed? Because if I put a check, if I put a control, of course I am safeguarding my company, but does the customer gain anything out of it? Of course, if I don't care about speed, I can still go ahead. But if I am talking about speed, time to the market, it's better you look at your checks and controls. Reconciliation. Most of the times I have seen people, the accounts department spends a lot of time in trying to reconcile. So if you have a re-engineered process, it's a natural flow. The reconciliation is minimized. And there's a single point of contact. You can call it a case manager. You can call it a process owner. Somebody owns the process. Somebody is accountable. It's not that, oh, this is the credit checks department's job. This is the returns department job. No, there is a process owner, and you can leverage your centralized and decentralized operations. Because with IT, now you have something called shared database. It's not that you have to wait for somebody to finish. You can still extract information. So you can leverage the benefits of a centralized and a decentralized system. Thing is, your purchasing is centralized. Very good. You want to control. But for a pencil, for a rubber, why do you want to centralize it? Why don't you give people the authority to purchase so that you save, you optimize? Because if you are trying to control, centralize your purchase of a pencil, it may not be worth it. Moving to the new world, yes, there are a lot of things which you will see new. Of course, it's very difficult to accept change, but in a re-engineered world, work units change. For example, you were used to doing only a specialized thing, but now you are doing 4 different things. Your jobs will change. You were used to doing things in a certain way, now you do it in a different way. People's role change. You start making decisions. Your job preparation change. You may not be just doing routine job. Focus of performance measures and compensation shifts. It's not that I have done this task so I should be paid. No. Has your task added any value? Is your task directly adding any value to the customer? Is it generating more revenues for the company? So performance measures will change. Again, advancement criteria change. Thing is, typically when we look at it, I have spent 3 years in a company, I am due for a promotion. But it's not the thing. Advancement is more of whether you are really fit for the future role. You may be excellent in your current role, but are you really fit for your future role? So these criteria will change whether you get promoted or not. Your values change. Thing is, earlier you were only confined to I have completed my task, but now you start looking at it. What is the value I am adding to this process? You don't have managers who just now were just giving orders. They are more of a coaches. It's easy to say. It doesn't really happen more often in real life, but that is how the new world, a re-engineered world looks like. There are structural level changes. You may have initially a 10-level hierarchy, but in order to expedite your decision making, you may consider reducing your hierarchical levels. And your executives are leaders. Like, you don't try to just, okay, I have performed this task. You try to see what all I can do so that it yields more business. It's good for my organization. Again, I emphasized IT has a very prominent role to play in a BPR environment. People who have been part of ERP implementations typically see that you usually go for a re-engineering process, but most of the times it really doesn't happen, because what usually you end up is some process improvements rather than BPR. But yes, IT has a very big role to play, because I said if you are trying to automate
an existing process, then you won't get too much of gains. It may be 10%, 20%. Unless you have re-engineered your process, IT cannot help. Business drives your IT. IT is an enabler. IT can never drive your business. So some of the breakthroughs in information technology which has actually facilitated is shared databases. Now, earlier, unless this person gives me this information, I don't have access. But now your databases is shared. So you can, wherever you are in the world, you still have access to that information. It's like a single source of truth. Next is your expert systems. There was a trend where scientists were involved in actually doing some very, very specialized tasks. Scientists are not meant for that. They are there for thinking about new inventions. Why not have an expert system do some of these things, and you can actually have an average guy do that. You don't need a scientist to run your business. Of course, there has been a vast improvement in telecommunication networks. Thing is, now you have this video conferencing. Sitting in India, you can actually do a meeting with 5 geographies thanks to the video conferencing units which have come up. You also have now decision support tools. DSS is nothing but you can do your simulations. What if analysis? What if my demand increases by 10%? What if tomorrow there is a swine flu in Mexico? Where should I do my manufacturing? So you have today a lot of softwares available in the market which can actually help you do your simulations and make a decision. You also have now your wireless data communication. For example, with a PDA device, you can approve your request. You can scan where the material is. You can track business sitting anywhere. You don't need to be wired. You don't need to be connected. Of course, we talked about interactive video disk where you actually the communication barriers have come down. You have this RFID. Of course, RFID is still quite expensive, but we hope that in the coming years these costs are going to come down. And of course, you have now high performance computing. You have big data analytics which is coming in a big way. We generate a lot of data every day, but there has to be a system to actually churn that data to make some meaning out of it. So some of the things now, BPR is not for everybody. I had said we have looked at some of the criteria which fits. This is not a sacrosanct list. There is no thumb rule. But what we have seen is most of the benefits which get in a BPR, if, for example, you have a lot of information exchange between departments. There is a lot of data redundancy. Sales department is maintaining the data, production is maintaining the same data. And there is rekeying. The accounts department enters the invoice. The purchasing department also maintains the invoice. So there is a duplication. So if you are in a situation like this, it's better you actually have a relook at your process. You are holding too much of inventory. You have too much buffers. You are maintaining your supply chain on inventory, not on information. So that is actually a good candidate for BPR. You have too much of checking, you have too much of control. Everywhere there is control. It doesn't add any value to the customer. If you are looking at speed, if you are looking at go-to-market, faster go-to-market, it's high time you relook at your checks and controls. There's a lot of rework and iteration. Same thing like reconciliation. You do the process again and again. There's a lot of time which is wasted in closing the books. You have to look at your process. You're handling your processes by exceptions. You have one version of the process, you have 100 exceptions. No, you are suboptimal. It's better you maintain 3 or 4 versions. No harm in that. But you don't have to put people there just to handle exceptions. Because based on my experience, exception handling can be a nightmare if it just goes out of your control. So again, let's look at some of the common mistakes. Again, these are not just my learnings. This is most of a collective learning. So these are some of the mistakes which you have seen people make, and then they said, no, BPR doesn't work for me. It's a fad. Maybe you never actually looked at it. Thing is, don't try to fix a process. BPR is all about change. If you are looking to fix a process, if you are looking to improve a process, then it's a process improvement. It's not a BPR. Again, thing is, you are not focusing on business process. Lot of times we said, no, credit check, I will improve this. Credit check is a department or is a function. You have to look at your end-to-end order to cash cycle. Credit check comes in your order to cash cycle. So unless you look at each of the elements in totality, you will never be able to get the benefits out of it. Next is, you only look at process redesign, ignore everything. That is again you are making a mistake. In course of the process redesign, you end up certain additional benefits. For example, when we were doing a BPR for a high-tech company, we figured out that all the delivery metrics, the way the KPIs are designed had to be changed. The manager came and said, we were only here to do a BPR for the order to cash cycle. This is additional. But they failed to look at what are the benefits. If the process change warrants a change in KPI, do it. There is no harm in redoing it. You neglect people's values and beliefs. Most of the time when you go for a BPR, there's a lot of resistance. See, of course, usually BPR is a top-down approach, but it's not that you try to tread upon people's values and beliefs. For example, if you don't have people with you, you cannot really succeed, because technology, you can have the best of technology, you can have the best of your consultants, but if you don't have the buy-in of your people, I'm telling you, you're bound to fail, because in most of our experience, people, they are the key to any kind of success. Next is, if you are looking for minor results, no, BPR is not for me, because it needs a lot of investment in terms of money, cost, people. Again, you quit too early. See, it needs because it's a very, enduring process. Your benefits may not come very fast, and if you think that you can do a BPR in 1 month and there is no time frame, it doesn't work. So you need to have some patience to actually reap the benefits of a BPR. Again, what we have typically seen is, oh, this is my scope, let's try to define the scope. Fine, of course, you will try to maintain your scope. You will see that scope creep doesn't happen, but don't put a constraint at the beginning. Let's first try to look at it, and if needed, we will redefine the scope. But initially, if you try to put too many constraints, that chances are that you will not succeed. Again, there are certain cultures, there are certain management attitudes, which any organization, it has a culture, it has an attitude. So you are allowing if you are really committed to BPR, all these things are bound to happen. It's not you try to bulldoze, it's you have to take a buy-in, you have to talk to people, you have to try to understand where the problem is, why there is a resistance. So if you are trying to allow the existing corporate, no, my culture doesn't suit me, then maybe it's not for you. Again, re-engineering, it's fantastic if we can have re-engineering from bottom up, but most of the time it doesn't happen, because maybe people at the bottom may not really appreciate the value they are doing to the end customer. So they may not see the value in it. So most of the time we have seen that there has to be somebody at the top who is driving it. I'm not saying bulldozing it, but there has to be some drive from the top. Otherwise, it's not tracked properly. Again, majority of the times, you assign somebody who is available, not on your skill set. That person may not be willing, but maybe he doesn't have enough responsibilities. You have given him this task. It's highly possible that you will fail, because that person doesn't have the skill set to handle it. Again, you're trying to save costs. Maybe there are 3 people needed. You only decide to put 1. Then it is a recipe for disaster. If you try to bury re-engineering in the middle of corporate agenda, okay, we will do this for the next 2 years, and re-engineering is one of them. No, it doesn't happen like that. Re-engineering needs to be handled as a separate, because if you try to mix it with too many things, it's a recipe, you may not succeed. Again, don't do too many things at a time, because you are actually diluting the whole thing. Again, we have seen this. Don't try to re-engineer when the top guy is just away from retirement. In one of our projects, we were actually doing it for this procure to pay process. We're trying to re-engineer, but we saw that there was a lot of resistance from the CEO. Then we figured out that the CEO was about to retire in the next 1.5 years. So he didn't want to take chances. He had an excellent track record. So he never wanted to take that risk that, okay, if something happens, then whatever I have done, it's all gone. So it's better not to re-engineer when the top guy is just away from retirement. These are some of our learnings which we have seen over the years. Again, the biggest mistake is any improvement project, you put it as BPR. No, it's not true. BPR is you are taking a fresh page, a blank sheet, and starting all over. If you are doing process improvements, don't call it BPR. It is not. Again, don't just concentrate on design. Your design may be fantastic, but you have to also implement that. There will be implementation challenges. You also have to look at that. And if you think that I want to make everybody happy and yet be successful, this doesn't happen. Because to be very honest, you cannot make everybody happy in this world. There will be some unhappy faces, so you have to really balance which works best for you. Again, these are not ground rules. These are not sacrosanct, but this is what has been our learning. Again, you are pulling, when there's a resistance, you are pulling back. You decided to start. In the middle, you saw resistance and you pulled back. Then you were never committed. You didn't talk to people. The thing is, you have to talk to people. I don't say bully people. You need to talk to people and then decide whether whether BPR is there for me. And don't drag the effort. If you think that, okay, I will do it in 5 years, 6 years, it doesn't happen because it's cost time, money, people get exhausted. Your money gets wasted. People lose interest. So again, some of you may not actually be doing BPR, but what I will recommend is if you happen to get this book, it's a 200-page book. Michael Hammer and James Champy, you can call them the father of re-engineering. You can read that. It's an excellent book. It's actually it's a very good read. So I will recommend you try to have it's a very not difficult to read. It's explained in very easy language and you will actually enjoy it. So now I will pass it to Shilpa.
Thank you so much, Sandeep, for a wonderful presentation. And with that, I'm taking over the control back to our screen here, and we will shortly start the Q&A. So just as a reminder to the participants, if you have any questions, please type it into the comment box. We have a couple of questions that I'll be taking up shortly. Before that, I would like to give a brief introduction to the next webinar that is coming up. So after Sandeep's fantastic presentation, the next presentation that is going to be on next Thursday is going to be from training head of Aurobindo Pharmacy, and the title of the presentation is Train the Trainer, and how do you build effective trainers in the process within the organization. Again, a very critical component of building organizational excellence. So if you want to register, please go ahead and do so at lancet.org. With that, I come to the question and answers. We have a question here. The first question being, what would trigger re-engineering of a process and what measures would you use? Sandeep?
Yeah. The thing is, what triggers is, again I said, if you are looking at an improvement of 10 to 20%, if you want to reduce your cost by 20%, or you want to reduce your delivery time by 20%, or you want to reduce your procurement cost by 20%, then BPR is not for you. If you are looking at anything, it's not a sacrosanct figure, but if you are looking at anything more than 20%, then only you are a candidate for BPR. The thing is, in BPR, if you look at it, the metrics which we usually follow is cost, delivery, and customer satisfaction. Again, it varies from organization to organization. But again, if you are looking for marginal improvements, no, BPR is not for you. It's actually, I gave an example, the concept of virtual store. It changed the entire buying experience. The concept of how Dell is able to give you laptops at such low prices. It's like a moving supply chain. So these are some of the drastic, again, if you look at it, video conferencing. Earlier people had to travel to China for a meeting. But what has happened? With video conferencing, you have saved a lot on your traveling costs. So these are some of the things which we have seen BPR, that triggers the BPR.
Right, I think fantastic answers there, Sandeep. We had also similar questions, and I believe that would have also been answered in the process. And the question was, how does one identify which is the best process to put through BPR? So I think the answer that you just gave would hold true for this question as well. And in case the participant feels the need to, elaborate further on the question, you can again use the chat window or come back to us, write us an email, and we would be glad to clarify that in more detail. So, moving on, the next question is, how does an organization change an existing process? Does it have to be in one shot, or can BPR be over a period of time? I believe, Sandeep, the question is more to do like, how do you actually, if an organization is used to an existing process, how do you bring about a change in the process? If we talked about cultural changes and a lot of other overheads in the process that need to be managed at the same time. So how does BPR work in that scenario?
Okay. So what actually you have to look at is, again, see, BPR cannot be done over a very short time. It has to be an elaborate process, because if you're looking at redesigning your entire process, if you think that I can do it in 2 weeks, it doesn't happen. The thing is, why do you want to? There are 3 kinds of companies which actually do BPR. One, who are desperate, who are actually going to go out of business. So they have to find something very radical. Second is companies who are doing okay, but still they want to capture more of the market. Third is companies who are doing excellent, but they want to take you to the next level experience. 20-30 years ago, can you even imagine that we can actually do a conference over an internet with people all over the world? The thing is, when we look at a process, there will be multiple stakeholders. So it cannot be done within 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Maybe it will take about a year. And thing is, don't have any biases. You have to relook. For example, why did Best Buy go for a virtual store? They figured out they had a problem of huge inventory. They had to actually store inventory in their shops. Second thing is, if you have to set up a shop, you have to pay taxes. So that is passed on to the consumer. So if you have something called a virtual store, there are 2 fundamental elements. For example, your inventory reduces drastically. You save a lot on the tax component. It took about 2 years for them to figure it out. But yes, that is not a certain time frame. But what I think the question which comes from is, typically for any ERP implementations, people go for a BPR and they try to finish it in 1 or 2 months. It doesn't happen like that. There are multiple stakeholders. You have to get everybody involved. I am not saying you have to make everybody happy, but yes, you have to get at least everybody involved.
Right, makes sense. So thank you for that answer, Sandeep. The last question that we have for today is, can you give some examples of re-engineered processes that have multiple versions? I believe you've covered this point in the initial slide that a re-engineered process can have multiple versions as well. Doesn't having multiple versions of the same process make the process difficult to maintain?
I agree, it makes difficult, but for example, I have three segments of my customers. One customer is very prompt in payment. They have never defaulted. Second customer, okay, they have not defaulted, but their aging usually runs for 60 days. Third kind of group of customers, they have defaulted. So in case of first kind of customer, do I actually need to do a credit check every time? Because credit check takes time. Because you have to first key in whatever is available, you have to get the data from, of course, today you have IT which is enabled, processes are very fast, but you are only maintaining 3 versions of your process. But just imagine, I have a standard process. I have to do a credit check for everybody. Okay, if this customer has paid, the last payment was prompt, but the payment before that had a problem, I need to have an exception. Another customer I can have, okay, he has defaulted now, but previous 5 payments have been very prompt, so I have another exception. The thing is, if you have too many exceptions, because with a single process the problem arises, you handle too many exceptions and you need people to actually handle it. But yes, if it works fine for you, if you are able to manage with a single process, you are able to control your exceptions, you are good. You don't need to go for a BPI. So because we have seen customers with a single process, they had 1,000 exceptions and they had a whole team of 20 people just doing exceptions. So this is where I was coming from. If you are able to manage it, well and good.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much, Sandeep, again for the wonderful presentation and handling the question and answers so well. If anybody has any further questions and you were not able to pose them right now, again feel free to drop them an email to us at contact@lacet.org, and we would be happy to take your questions with the presenter later during the week. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the recording of the webinar will be available shortly on lacet.org, so feel free to download the presentation and view the recording later. So with that, a formal, again, thank you, Sandeep, for being part of the, Lacet team and supporting us for this webinar. And you have a great evening ahead, and thank you, participants, for joining us from all over. We hope you found the webinar valuable, and we look forward to hosting you on future webinars of Lacet as well. Have a great day, great evening, great afternoon, wherever you are. So bye-bye for now. We'll see you next time. Thank you.